Please be advised, this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered health, tax, legal, or professional advice. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.
And now, I talk back with Ray.
I'm telling you, I couldn't make it up if I tried.
And Mandii.
You've got to be freaking kidding me. You know what? That's all I'm saying. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. You have tuned into your new favorite duo, Ray and Mandii. On today's episode, we're going to be chatting with one of my oldest and dearest friends, Mesa Fama. She is a published author. She is a mental health and suicide advocate. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology, and she is a behavior enthusiast and a filmmaker. Her and her husband are filmmakers, which is really, really neat. So,
awesome.
Yeah, welcome, Mesa.
Hey, Mesa.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today.
My wheels are already turning. I'm going to have to call
I'm
you
so
after
glad.
this.
Okay.
Yes.
I won't charge you, I promise.
I appreciate it.
Yes. So as everybody knows, this September 10th, tomorrow, is World Suicide and Prevention Day. And Mesa is a huge advocate for mental health and suicide awareness. But yeah, I just want her to go ahead and chat about her story.
Oh gosh. Okay. So thank you for the lovely introduction. Happy to be here. My story, where do I begin? So I will start by saying I am a suicide survivor. So I had 2 attempts in my younger years. So when I was 19 and when I was 22. I look at those times as, now looking back, they were kind of my jumping off point into realizing there was something really wrong with me and not really sure where to go during those like horrible, years of my life. Flash forward to 2008 when I lost my mother to suicide. And even previous to that, I had lost my dad when I was 17, also to suicide. So I come from this long line of mental health issues. And that losing my mother prompted me to go get my degree. I needed to know what was happening to me, to my family. Back when I had, tried to take my life, I didn't seek help. I didn't know where to go. Number one, didn't know that it was even available. I just was kind of lost and thankfully still alive. It has driven me forward now to writing about mental health. I got my degree from ASU in psychology. I've learned so many things about the mind and why we do what we do and how our family history impacts us and the things that, we carry with us through, even just our environment plays a huge role in how we see ourselves and others who are also suffering. I think with suicide prevention, World Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day being tomorrow, September 10th, and then this entire month of September is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. It's huge because it continues to prompt conversation. I am a massive advocate for removing the language that suicide is selfish. I understand that there are caveats to that there are people who will do it for that reason. But the majority of people who take their lives, it's because they don't know how to get out of what's going on in their mind. They think that the pain will never, ever end. At least this, and I can speak to this from my own experience. I thought I would be better, not I, but everyone around me would be better off if I wasn't here. I felt like I was a burden. I felt like just the pain would not end, and I didn't know any other way to get it out. So in that regard, to me, that's why I don't feel like suicide is selfish, because you're looking at it through the lens of, everyone around you. You're trying so hard to stay for them, and you want to make them happy and them proud, and all of those things. And at the same time, you kind of like start losing yourself, and you start thinking, well, they'll just be better off without me. And to me, that is where the selfishness isn't there. It's just a response to pain, really, in the end. So I advocate for that. I advocate for people seeking help. I advocate for constant communication, especially if you're in that dark place. Find yourself a support system, whether that's therapy, psychiatry, friends, family, anybody that you trust. There's a ton of groups out there now. There's lots and lots of resources. Sometimes that can feel overwhelming too. But it's out there. Help is out there and available. And so I advocate for people to use that and stay. There's so many reasons to stay. The pain eventually does subside. The thoughts are still there in my head. I'm not going to lie. Mm-hmm. I still have bad days. I still have, moments that pop up where I'm like, you know what? I just can't. I can't. And when I get to that point, I realize I probably need to sleep. I probably need to reach out to someone. Maybe I need a piece of chocolate. Maybe I need something to break me out of that cycle in my head. Yeah. So that's me in a nutshell. And why I do what I do and why I advocate.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, and I've said this to you numerous times, and I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart. You are one of the smartest, most intelligent, beautiful soul. You are just one of the most beautifulest people that I've ever met in this universe. And it would be a tragedy if this universe were to lose you without, for something like that, because you are such a special person. I feel so honored and blessed to know you. I really, truly do.
Yeah. I feel that way about you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I think it is hard for others who don't know, have never seen dark. I don't think they don't understand the levels or the depths that the mind can get. And so it is hard for them to understand, like, some people have never felt depression before. They don't know what it feels to be like in a dark place. And so they don't understand the outcomes of suicide, things like that. Because like you said, sometimes it's not that somebody just wants to do it. Sometimes it's just people just want things to stop, and they don't know any other way to make them stop. So and I think my first encounter with suicide was in 6th grade. We had a classmate, he committed suicide. And I was friends with his girlfriend at the time, and she was actually on the phone with him when he did it.
No.
Yeah. And so that was my first encounter with suicide. And I feel like my entire life, I have had an obsession with death for whatever reason. Like, I remember when I was about 6 or 7, I would literally go to sleep at night and think about, one day this is not going to be here. One day I'm going to cease to exist. One day everybody that I love is going to be gone. And I would almost send myself into panic attacks thinking about it so deep on that level. And I don't even know how at that age I was thinking about things like that, and this is something I've never shared because I didn't want people to think that I was weird, or what I mean? Because death is a very taboo subject. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to think about it, even though it is inevitable. Like, we can't change anything that's going to happen,
Nope.
And so I feel like talking about it and bringing awareness to the stigmas that suicide brings, and just having a conversation about it, it's just necessary.
I agree. I agree 100%. I think, when I think back, you bring up childhood. I remember, I think in 7th grade, and Chrissy was actually close with this young boy who had been on antidepressants, I guess, his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
and ended up taking his life. I can't remember his name now, which makes me feel bad, but I can still see his face,
Yeah.
which is interesting, you know? So I think we encounter it throughout our lives in different stages,
Mm-hmm.
right? So starting from childhood, and then I know a lot of people from our class,
Mm-hmm.
you know, have
Yeah.
passed because of it. It's this like pervasiveness, but I feel like if people would talk about it more, or maybe destigmatize it more, and understand that if you talk to the average person, right, or almost everyone knows someone
Mm-hmm.
that has either experienced it themselves, knows someone who has,
Right.
or has had, you know, friends or family. It's this insidiousness
Mm-hmm.
that our minds can talk us into this, you
Right.
know.
Well, I
Anyway,
just want to say thank you, Miss Mace.
you're welcome.
And I'm glad God blocked it. I want to
Yes.
say that. I'm a Christian, and I believe when it's not our time, and we have bigger things we have to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
people that we have to touch their lives, that He will just block some things. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful that He did it for you twice.
Yes.
Thank you.
I do have yes, I have a question for you. So,
Sure.
I have heard, and you can like, and just I just want to know what your thoughts are about this. So,
Yeah.
I have heard a few things when it comes to suicide, but what I've heard as well is when somebody's expressing it and they're talking about it, they're not they're still suicidal tendencies, but the fact
Mm-hmm.
that they're expressing it and they're talking about it is a good thing, right?
Yes.
I've on the flip side, on that same, that same sense, I've also heard that when they stop talking is when you should get concerned. When they stop talking and they become happy all of a sudden. Because I have a bachelor's degree, but it's just not in psychology, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But we did have to take some psych
Mm-hmm.
courses, and we talked about that in the classroom, and I just kind of inserted myself in there, and I was like, well, just so y'all know, like this has happened to me as well. And what happened is, what you have to really be like pay attention to is when somebody stops talking and they become
Mm-hmm.
happy, because at that point they've made the resolution,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to take
Mm-hmm.
their life, they want to talk to people and just like have good lasting memories, and then they've made their mind up. So how do you feel about that comment, that it's not when people are talking you have to really worry, it's when they talk and now they stop talking about it? How do you feel about
I actually agree with that. There's a lot of the more someone is talking about it and expressing it, the better, to be honest, because they're getting it off their chest.
that?
I've not heard the part about people all of a sudden expressing happiness after when they've made that resolution, but I could see that. I can see
Mm-hmm.
how that would come about. I do know that for myself, I went inward, and I mean, I had the letters, I did all of that, and then I was like, okay, and I didn't feel a sense of like, okay, you know, this is what I'm doing. It was more of like, I'm just going to do this because I don't know what else to do. And I know that moving forward from that, anytime I had that, you know, emotion pop up, I was like, okay, I need to make a phone call. And I would start talking about it. But I do know that, like, for my mother, especially, she did not. She stopped talking, and she stopped expressing things to me. Like, I had seen her 2 weeks prior to her passing, and she wasn't okay. I knew she wasn't okay, but she was okay enough that I didn't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
So when it happened, it was a shock. I was like, wait a minute. You know, I had been conversing with her nearly daily and sending her pictures of her grandkids, and you know, it was still like a wait, what did I miss? Where did I not
Mm-hmm.
see it? And I think it was the fact that she had just stopped talking about what was going on with her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I can see how the silence would become deadly at that point.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I have so since you have had the experience, and you
Mhm.
know, the insights of, when things are progressing, when things are starting to happen, what signs do you think that you should look for? Should you have, somebody in your family, or, maybe people talking about, they're done with things, or, just expressing how much they're hating their life right now? What kind of signs do you think you should look for?
I think if if you see the pattern of their life change, where they go from maybe being with friends and family, doing things in life that they um, enjoyed, and then they change
Hmm.
and stop, and they start isolating, and
Hmm.
they stop really responding, and it's like what we were just discussing. Ray and I were just discussing about, they kind of just go inward
Hmm.
and become more withdrawn. That's really what to look for. Look for severe depression that they won't go get treatment for.
Hmm.
That's a big sign, when they feel like, they just don't want
Okay.
help.
Yeah,
That, I think, is a big sign too.
gotcha. So kind of like when they stop living life, when they're
Yeah,
just, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
because if they're complaining about it, and they're finding things, I mean, that could just be that they're just unhappy with whatever is happening at
Hmm.
that moment. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to take them, take
Hmm.
that next step. um but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and
Hmm.
to check in with them if they are making big statements like that. Just make sure and be like, hey, are you okay? Can
Hmm.
I help? Is there anything you need? Things like that, and making sure that they know that they're not by themselves.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good one. I think that that's a really important thing, like just to kind of keep expressing that you could talk to me, because some people won't talk. Some people just
Mm-mm.
don't want to
Yeah.
share, And so
Yeah.
it's like, how do you get it out of them? How do you make them feel like you are a safe space for them? You know what I mean? That you will sit there with
Mm-hmm.
them in their grief, in their anger, in their sadness, with no judgment, and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of hold space for them to release whatever it is they need to release?
Yeah. And sometimes it is just taking that step of just physically being there. You
Hmm.
don't necessarily have to say anything to them. If you know that they're just in this dark space, just go
Hmm.
sit there. Do things that maybe they would need done for them, like whether
Hmm.
it's cooking, cleaning, going grocery shopping for them, because sometimes it gets to feel like too much, you
Hmm.
know?
Oh yeah.
So just having, I think sometimes people just need that too.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think so I'm gonna share something, and I may start crying because it's still like, even though it's been a while, it's still like, fresh.
I
Um
got you.
so in 2017, when we had our miscarriage and we lost our daughter Embry, and
Mm.
then that was in September, and then 2 months later I lost my dad. And so it was a very hard year for me.
Yes.
And so in December, I feel like I was in the darkest space that I've ever been in. I remember so vividly, I was laying on my bed and my daughter was laying next to me, and I was just bawling. And I was like,
Mm.
I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm done, like I can't, it's just too much for me. Like, I don't know how to process everything, and I don't know what to do. And so we were just laying there, and then she started crying with me. And she was like, Mom, she was like, I don't want to be in a world without you. She was like,
Oh,
so if you leave, I will probably leave too.
oh,
And that was very hard for me to process while I was still
yeah,
grieving and going through what I was
yeah.
going through. And honestly, opened my eyes, and it made me want to
Mhm.
try just by her sharing
Yeah,
that with me, you
yeah,
know? So I think that's why I said it's very important to find somebody who will hold space with you,
yes.
that will just be there in your grief with you, as uncomfortable as it may feel, you know,
Oh, for sure.
just to sit
Yeah.
with you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I have, of course, come up from then, but
Yeah.
it was a very hard to pull myself out of that deep. depression that I was in at that time. And I had postpartum depression,
Mhm.
um, and it's hard to even process having those kind of things when you don't have a baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have the after effects of having a baby, but you don't have that baby. And so it was just a very hard time. So that's why I always state that it's very, if you don't understand the darkness,
Mhm.
it's hard to even think about it,
I agree. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a really good point. One, I do want to say I'm so sorry. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry that you were in that space and that you felt that way. Two, thank you for sharing because that in itself is super hard,
Mhm.
but very brave,
Thank you.
and I'm so glad. I'm so glad you had your daughter with you at that moment. You
Yes.
know, I'm so so glad. Um, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to
Hmm.
pull ourselves out when we don't have an anchor.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I had a couple questions for you. I asked a couple
Yeah,
people. I let them know, we were going to have you on and kind of, what they would want to know or want you to share. And
sure.
one of the question was, how did you overcome the thoughts that suicide was the only option?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Mhm.
How did I? I think that I recognize. So let me think about this for just a second.
Yeah, no
How I want
problem.
to how I want
Yeah.
to phrase this. I think when I get to a dark place like that, where my mind is running wild and says, you know what, it's just, you're done. Just don't worry about it anymore. Just be done. Um, I think about now my husband.
Yeah.
I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's
So
okay.
I think about my husband and I think
Hmm.
about my daughter and my grandson
Hmm.
and my son, even though I
Hmm.
don't, speak to him often. I think about all my friends. I think
Hmm.
about um, what a life I have built now,
Hmm.
and that it wouldn't be worth it. It wouldn't be worth it to lose that. I think that anyone who can pop themselves out of it has more strength than any any bodybuilder in the world.
Yeah.
Like being able to find whatever little piece in your life is good and that you can hold on to that for as long as you need to.
Hmm.
Because sometimes it doesn't, sometimes the thoughts don't just stop. You have to like consciously and continuously tell yourself, no, it's not worth it. Here are the reasons why I should stay. Like even something as silly as, well, I would miss watching my favorite show,
Hmm.
or I would miss going to get my favorite cup of coffee. They don't have coffee wherever you're going.
Yeah.
Like it's something so silly. It
Mhm.
sounds so silly to say it out loud, but the littlest things can help you stay. You just
Yeah.
have to look at your life and find those things and,
Yeah.
and hold on to them,
Yeah.
and then, like I said before, sometimes if the thoughts don't stop, I will literally just like lay down, close my eyes
Hmm.
and you try to take a nap, you
Yeah.
know? So anyway, that's
Yeah.
what I would say to that.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. I feel like with me, music is my outlet. Like, if
Oh
you want
yeah,
to
it's a
know
good one
how I'm
too. Yep.
feeling, you need to,
Yeah.
what music am I listening to today? That should be your question. Like,
Ah,
what music are you
okay.
listening to today? And if I tell you the music, you could tell whether it's melancholy, whether it's upbeat and vibrant, and that will let
Mhm.
you know what type of music I'm in. Because when I'm pissed, I will be listening to some like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Linkin Park, like
Yeah.
like let's go. Let's go. And when I'm in a spicy mood, you better catch me listening to Bone Thugs, Tupac, Biggie. Yeah.
Yes.
So Outcast, you know what I mean? Like so yeah,
Yes.
music to me. And I know you're a music lover as well. So
Oh yeah. It's so when you said Lincoln Park just now, it actually reminds me of I wrote a piece for the Mighty when Chester Bennington passed
yes.
away.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Suicide. He was
talked,
suicide,
yeah,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I talked about how the lyrics from Leave Out All the Rest
Mm-hmm.
kept me alive one day.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
I had been in a real, dark place. It was right around the time that I had lost my mom, and so I was in this just terrible space. And I had dropped my son off at daycare, and
Mm-hmm.
I came home, and I just before I got on my, phone to do my job because I worked from home,
Mm-hmm.
I turned on the TV randomly, just out of I don't know why. I just did, and that song came on, and I sat and I was like, wait a minute. And I listened to the lyrics, which I had never really done before. And I started like bawling in the middle of my living room. And I realized, wait a minute, I didn't have to go this route, And so it pulled me out of it. And when he passed away, I was just like, oh, just
Yeah.
like millions of others, just gutted by it. But I'm glad that you brought up music because that is a
Mm-hmm.
huge one.
Yeah.
It is a huge one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Their song for me is One More Light.
Oh, oh,
That one is such a deep song. Yes, you understand. Like just that song, I feel like that song has helped me
yeah,
on
for sure.
numerous occasions pull through any depression that I've been going through. Like I will
Yep,
play that song on repeat.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Right there
Yes.
with you.
Yeah.
Right there with you.
Yes, absolutely. And then, of course, one of the other questions you've already answered it. They were asking, do you still have those thoughts? Do they still come up?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yep, just not as frequently, which I'm really glad.
Yeah.
My chemistry in my brain, I'm recalibrating and retraining myself all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All the time. And I think it helps too that I recognize my triggers,
Yes, yes, that's
you
so
know.
important. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to kind of
Yep.
pull yourself back to where you need to be in your safe
Yep.
space. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And then I did have another question.
Mhm.
It is, what societal stigmas or shortcomings do you think we need to overcome around suicide?
Um, Number one, selfishness, that it's this crazy selfish act that requires everyone to be disdainful towards the person that was suffering.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is probably our number one failing in society, is that we make people feel like, you know, horrible humans if they've had these thoughts or if
Mm-hmm.
they've attempted, or, like somehow they're this awful human being. And while I've seen some changes, there is a good majority that still think this way. Like when I wrote my article about my life and the things I've experienced and the losses that I've had, I had so many people, because the whole premise was, please stop saying suicide is selfish. And
Mm-hmm.
so many people came out of the woodwork, number one, to support that said, yes, I agree with you. And then there were, I don't want to say handful, but quite a few who argued with me, who, told me I was terrible and that I was actually advocating for, these things,
Mm-hmm.
and which blew me away.
Yeah.
But it showed me that there is still this pervasiveness, that this is something that's to be deemed as this evil thing that someone goes through. And so I think that's where society fails. I think not uh, not having enough resources for people who are in that dark space. I
Mm-hmm.
know we have hotlines, and I know that um, there is a bigger push, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
And there's not enough. And I don't believe that they focus on this enough in college either. So when I was going for my degree, we didn't talk a lot about suicide. We didn't talk a lot about, we talked a lot about mental health. We talked a lot about mental illnesses. We discussed all of those things, but there was not a lot of training or classes or anything like that focused on suicide prevention, to be honest. And I think that is also another feeling. Just because
I think a lot of it, it's like you said earlier, it's like a lot of times people don't link the two.
Yeah.
Like suicide and suicidal ideations, it's a mental illness.
Yes.
And it's almost like they put it in this one space and then suicide's in a different space. When in reality, it's in the same space.
It
I mean,
is.
you're proof that like your family, it runs deep,
Yeah.
and at some point somebody has to either seek help, figure out what it is, be able to recognize it, be able to overcome it and come back from it, and then talk about it. So then, God forbid, if you see those things in your children because things get passed on, you can recognize it. You can recognize, okay, wait a minute, this looks a little too familiar,
Yep.
So you can, a lot of it, like I said, the isolation is a huge thing when when somebody goes into their cell. And so I just think like people just don't necessarily link the two, right? Or if no one ever talked about it,
right?
and then you have these issues, and you're like, but nobody in my family has these issues. When in reality, everybody does. Just nobody talks about it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So
yes,
I think that's like huge. Like, because I do remember we talked about. I think I probably brought it up in psych class, but I think, like you said, people don't really give it enough credit that it is a mental illness. Like it's not necessarily, and some people, they look at it, they view it as an end to a problem. And if they feel like they're the problem, and then they're not here anymore, well, the problem goes away, right? So they look at it like as an answer, and in reality, it's so not, right. It is going to cause more problems. But if you're in that space and that's what you're thinking, and that's what you're trying to reason your decision, it's going to make sense. If you're going to be like, well, if I just end the problem, then everybody will be fine. And then that's not necessarily how that works. But like I said, I do believe totally what you're saying, because people just don't really give it the attention that it deserves. And then I think sometimes too, people kind of feel like, well, if they're attention seekers, right? You hear that, right? If they're attention seekers, and then you hear somebody's crying wolf. Well, one day it's not going to be crying wolf. And then how are you going to feel about that?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And also at the same time, yes, they are seeking attention because they need help.
Yes.
Like so when they say that, I'm like, yes, that's exactly what it is. Yes, because they need the help.
Yeah, they're like, well, they just want somebody to care. Well, yeah, like let's say they're talking about it. Like if you understand the signs, then that would make sense, right? But if somebody's just very just blasé about things and not really taking it seriously, that this is a real mental issue, it's a mental illness, then they're not going to see it as such, so.
Yeah. And I also think that to what you said earlier, Mandii, is that people are afraid. So people are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to confront it. They get very defensive when it's somebody close to them, especially if they don't know how to help. They'll get on that, like, well, I don't know what you want me to do. Like they get because they're afraid. So they're projecting their fear onto the person who actually needs the help, and I think that maybe that might also be what we see in society. Like you said before, death, people are terrified of death. They don't want to talk about it. And so they don't want to talk about this. They don't want to confront this either. I don't know.
Like I said, if we don't talk about it, it's not real.
Exactly.
It's not going
Which is not true.
It's like, it is. Like, it is.
I think, and I think about like a lot of the things that people have done with, this is a whole nother can of worms, but like with all the shootings and things like that,
Oh,
like
yeah.
because mental health they need help, and I feel
Hmm.
like, and I don't know what was going on in their surroundings or how their family was set up, or even if they even had family or any support system, but I feel like pay attention. Like I feel like society needs to pay
Yeah.
attention to each other, because when people are going through things, you can actually see when they're,
Hmm.
like you said, pulling back or retreating. You can kind of sit with them and, talk to them and, what's going on, how are things, and just let them know somebody cares. Because when they feel that
Hmm.
nobody cares, then they don't care,
And
Yep.
it's a
and
sense of hopelessness is what they
yes. And
Yes.
then,
Yes.
yeah, and it's not just them that it affects.
yeah.
It's millions of families, when senseless things happen due to somebody having mental illness and nobody paying attention, you
Yep.
know?
I think we've gotten away from community. I don't feel like there's much of that anymore. We
Hmm.
are such a, self-centric,
Hmm.
focused society that, all we care about is, okay, well, I've got my bills to pay, I've got my life to live, I've got this, and this, and I can only focus so much attention on this one person that's in my life, and that's it. I can't see past that.
Hmm.
And that's where we fail.
Yeah.
We need to have community, and we just don't have that in this
Yeah.
in this society. It's just not there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was doing, a couple things and Mesa is a professional researcher. So when I say that I researched, I'm just talking about I Googled, girls. I Googled, okay? I Googled Mesa.
I
I apologize.
I I look. I used to be a professional researcher in my educational career. I just know how to Google maybe a little bit
Yeah, a
differently
little bit deeper. You
than
use better
the
words.
average. Yeah, I know how to
Yes.
dive just a little bit deeper. I know how to pull apart the misinformation
Yeah.
from what's fact.
Yeah.
I forgive you for Googling. I
Okay.
appreciate the effort.
There is
Okay.
a
Thank
separate
you.
Google. I learned that in school. There's a
There
separate
there
Google
is.
that you should
Yes.
use
Is
for
it the
Yeah.
DuckDuckGo?
scholarly. It's a scholarly Google where you can
It's
Google
scholar.
scholarly things.
Yes. Yes. If you're
And please,
like,
God forbid, don't use Wikipedia.
oh
Because
no.
I could go in there and change information right now.
Yeah,
You're like, I
Wikipedia
don't
is
like that.
Yeah.
no, it's not okay. It's not all right.
Well, on my
Anyway,
Google,
okay, you
oh
Googled.
yeah, on
You
my
Googled.
Google search,
I found.
yes, I did find. Um,
Okay.
and it said per the CDC.
Mhm.
Continue. Okay.
Mhm.
So it that said there was an 8.49% drop in 2022 for suicide
Mm.
among ages 10 to 24, but there was a 2.6 increase for all other ages.
Yes.
And I do know, especially during COVID, there was a very high increase in suicide amongst physicians.
I can see
Yeah.
that,
Hmm.
which is really scary
Yeah. Yeah.
and terrible.
And I actually am in a Facebook group with a wellness community here in Austin.
Hmm.
And I was seeing like every other day colleagues posting about their colleagues losing their lives to suicide,
Mm.
whether it was a self-infliction or family infliction.
Oh.
Yeah. And so those were very hard times, but I don't think, like, even in the medical community, the people that are there for their community and helping others with their well-being, it was very
Hmm.
hard on them. And the only way out for them was to just get out. And so
Yeah.
that was very hard to see.
I think it comes back to that feeling of helplessness, right?
Hmm.
Because they couldn't perform what they felt they needed to
Right.
do. That was their when you make that your sole purpose in life to help others, right? And
Hmm.
you feel like you're failing at that,
Hmm.
that that's a whole other level
Yeah.
of darkness,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
I do know too, I think I saw something, I don't remember exactly where. I know that there has been a high percentage of males who are taking their lives, is specifically in the middle, midlife age range, because a lot of them are feeling left behind by society, which is interesting. You know, I've seen a couple of different things about that. There's so many different layers to this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So many different layers, especially like looking at children now who are bullied, all of that, the youth that have to deal with online. We didn't have that as kids.
Right.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine what we would have turned into if we had social media as teenagers.
Oh my gosh.
Kid level,
look,
elementary school level.
We didn't, Lord, because some things don't need to be recorded. Like there's some things that I can't tell nobody but Jesus. So I'm just saying. These poor kids, these poor kids nowadays. It's just
everything's documented. Everything.
Yeah.
And then like people can be like, because and y'all know this, it happens as adults, because as we know, even if we're in the workforce and stuff, some people are keyboard bullies.
Yes.
Right. To where that's the email pirates that want to blind copy people and act crazy on the email, but when you see them, the story totally changes. And so I can only imagine, that's even in the workplace. So I can only imagine how it would be like a kiddo that's in whatever school, middle school, elementary, or high school, even college especially, and then you have to deal with your life, and a lot of times it's a very embarrassing moment that might have been recorded, or maybe you compromised yourself, or you sent somebody a picture of yourself, and they threatened to release it to everybody, and you're thinking, oh my God, my life is over, and it hasn't even started. And so I know people have taken their lives, for those reasons. So it's just, my goodness, like a lot of people have more things just, outside it, influences and factors that can make them make these horrible decisions that people just necessarily didn't even have to deal with before,
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So Ms. Mesa, what is there anything that you would suggest if anyone is, maybe they've noticed some things in their family, and then they're starting to feel like a certain type of way, they're like, I don't feel too good, and they don't quite know how to handle it. Is there anything that you would suggest that they could do?
I would suggest if they start feeling that way, or seeing something in themselves that they're like, hey, maybe I should go, get checked out, they can start with their doctor, their regular primary care. Usually they can help in some way. Sometimes, there's a ton of like online resources in terms of like, you can download, I think it's the Talk app. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but you have access to a therapist, like right then and there. Use the hotlines too. If you're in kind of like a crisis mode, use the hotline. But definitely go talk to a professional. 100%.
And like on your cell phone, if you dial 988, that will send you directly to the suicide hotline.
Yes.
But you don't just 988.
Yeah.
That's
and that is a suicide. Yeah. It's suicide and crisis hotline or lifeline. So it's for either one. Like if you just feel like you need to talk to somebody, 988.
Yeah. Use that. And definitely get a support system in place for yourself. Reach out to people that you trust and say, hey, I'm feeling this way. Can you come? Can you be here? Can you, like just have like a phone tree of people that you feel like are safe to talk to when you're feeling that way. If again, you're not necessarily getting to the crisis point, but you're starting to notice differences in yourself, definitely just please talk to a professional. Don't Google. Do not Google your symptoms. WebMD will try to kill you and tell you have cancer.
Exactly. It's always brain cancer.
Like it's you've got a tumor.
Yeah.
in the most random places. Don't do that. Just
Yeah.
talk to a pro.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And Mesa, I did see that you do have a website, mesafama.com. Would that be somewhere for people to find you?
That's that's one place to find me. I'm more active on social media than anything else, so they can find me on Facebook. It's just Mesa. It's Facebook, .com/mesa.fama. Same with Instagram. Also, just Instagram mesa.fama. I just started a Substack, so that's really easy. Substack.com, and then just at my first name, Mesa. That's where I do all of my sharing and my writing. And, they can find me on the Mighty if they want to see the things that I've written about for mental health. And that's it. That's where I'm at. I live on the web.
Nice. Well, I cannot wait to see you again. I swear.
Me too.
I wish I wish I lived closer. I do not want to live back in Las Vegas, but
I understand. Been back 5 years. I understand.
But I will definitely be visiting more because I think, I feel like you said, just find yourself a group, your circle that makes you feel happy. And I feel like you're a part of that. So being around you is just lovely.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I'm glad to call you my friend and have you in my group.
Yes, yes.
I definitely count you among my most trusted. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And here, luckily, Ray, I've known Ray for a very long time, over 2 decades as well.
Nice.
And so I love that she's available for me locally, So that
nice.
Helps. Yeah. Yeah.
Amanda has been, we have been there for each other.
Yeah.
We have tons of stories.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about next month.
Yeah.
Hooray!
So we do relationship series. Yeah.
Yes.
It's gonna be.
Ooh, that's another favorite topic of mine.
Oh my God. Amanda has let me use her car before.
Yeah.
Because I was like,
that story will be shared.
I'm like, as a getaway car, Ray? Where you going?
No, it was a getaway.
As a PI car. But we'll talk about that.
Okay.
That was a Stratus, Amanda.
That was a Charger. Yeah.
Charger. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda's her cars. Amanda was like the first, so I had like a little Camry, right? A little silver Camry, regular car.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a Galant, like just regular cars. And then we were at in our parking lot, and Amanda pulls in on 22s, doing Cadillac turns in the parking lot.
Big body swanging.
Yeah, Amanda's always been funny to me in that aspect. I was like, oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. I've always had more masculine energy than feminine, and I love my muscle cars. I love the freaking Dodge Chargers. I love the Chevy Camaros, and I love sitting on 22s. I just love souped up cars. That's just, I love it.
That was eye-opening, but yeah.
Well, I can't wait to hear all about that story.
Oh, there's tons of stories. Yeah. Funny stories.
Yes. But thank you so much, Mesa, for joining us. This has been an amazing, amazing episode. And I'm hoping that, if somebody's out there watching this, and if them or someone they know are having suicidal thoughts, they can always reach out to talk with someone, or call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, like Ray said, at 988. But I just want them to know that they are important and that they belong, and that this universe just would not be the same without them. Yeah,
I agree. There's space for all of us.
Yes, absolutely. All right, guys.
Thank you, Ms. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to maybe pulling up in Vegas to meet you too one day.
I would love that. I would love that. And I'm so glad I got to meet you too. Great to be here and talk to you both. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into I Talk Back with Ray and Mandii. Please hit the like and subscribe button to stay updated on future podcasts.